evening, everybody. This is your host, Huge Pop, from the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. It's Thursday Night Alliance. And with me, I have my good friend, Herb Simmons from SICW. And on the bottom of the screen is a very, 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 very lovely lady. She is the wife of the legend, Bruiser Body. She's going to share stories. Welcome to the show, Barbara Goodish. How you doing, Miss Goodish?
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be on the show. So I'm happy to meet you, happy to see Herb, and happy to get this on the road.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. Thank you, Herb, for setting this up.
And happy to get this on.
And my first question, I guess, would be, how does it feel that fans still remember your husband after all these years? Because, man, he is all over the internet, and my gosh, he's standing back in the background over there behind Herb. So
I see that. I see him standing there. You know, I think it's such an honor because it's going to be 36 years this July that he left us. And you know, he used to talk about when he would go to a show. And his one thing was he always wanted to give the fans the best night of their life. I mean, I wish I could tell him now that you certainly did that these people are still remembering you. And even ones that were not even born have picked him up. It's absolutely amazing when I do some of these fan fests that I go to, that I have these young gentlemen coming up and talking to me, and they said they've, you know, read your book and they've watched his, you know, matches on YouTube. And then I asked them their age, and they weren't even born when he left us. So to his family and that, you know, you have to thank the fans because they're the ones too that are keeping his memory alive. And not only the fans, there's a gentleman sitting back there, Herb Simmons, that has kept his memory alive too. So I have to give a big credit to Herb as well.
51 years in the business, man. That's impressive.
Yes.
Yes,
and
man.
never forgot Frank, so Bruiser. So as I said, between that, he is still remembered today. And what an honor for his family that we are still remembering. We're still talking about him 36 years, 35 years later.
Yeah, I mean, he...
And Barbara, real quick, I noticed that the spark behind my knock is watching us, Mickey. And I know when I told her you were going to be on tonight, she made Jessica get Scott's program up so she could sit there and listen to you.
Thank you, Mickey, for watching. Thank you, Jim, Big Texan, for watching. Thank you guys for watching the show. Everybody that's out there, 7 of y'all, thank you so much. We're going to have fun with Miss Goodish and Herb. We're going to just go through the life of Miss Goodish and Bruiser Brody, and let's get into it, right?
And I think it's worth mentioning, Scott, that, well, like Barbara said, his legacy is being carried on. And I got to give her kudos because, you know, every year whatever her schedule is, and she'll tell you, her schedules became real busy over the last many years. But anytime she knows I set this Bruiser Brody Memorial up, she keeps that May date open, and she comes in, and the fans just love her. And I think she'll tell you as we go on tonight what it means to hear that chant of still Brody, Brody, Brody does to her.
Oh, I know. I mean, I'll get up there in the ring, you know, do a little speech, especially when it's the Bruiser Brody Memorial and they have the Battle Royal. And like Herb just said, the fans are still chanting Brody, Brody, Brody. And another little chant they sometimes do is this, Huss, Huss, Huss.
Yes. That's what I remember. Yeah. I remember that, you know. So, I mean, that's, you know, Bruiser was around before me. I was born in 1970, so I watched as I got older, you know. So, but you know, Haas, that was the thing I always learned.
Yeah, a lot of the fans will do that, and you know, that awesome. Must have been his trademark, his little sound.
I think Barbara will tell you when I bring her in, I always have her to get involved because the first time I had her in. We took her into the locker room, and of course, everybody was just standing there wanting to meet her. And then Larry Matisek and I pitched the idea about how we were going to get her involved. And she said, "What? What are you talking about?" Well, yeah,
Me?
you can't be the widow of Bruiser Brody and not
Right.
or use a chair or trash can or something in this match, and so each year we always have something for the fans to help keep his memories alive by way of his widow. You know.
Oh, I know. He's had me throwing trash cans into the ring. He's had
Slap.
me pull people over the top rope. He's
Right.
had me throwing chairs into the ring. And I won't even mention some of the other ones he's had me do.
Well, there was a specific one I want to talk about. It was when the Canadian hero, Sean Vincent, took the Bruiser Brody Cup
Oh gosh.
at last year. And that I seen the picture of you wanting to rip that thing away from him. Talk about that Canadian Sean Vincent and what that meant.
Oh, I mean, it was just everything was going, Bobby D had won the trophy fair and square. And then here comes the Canadian. And there was another gentleman too, Herb. What was the other gentleman that was
Glenn
in
Williams.
Big nasty Glenn Williams.
Yeah.
Glenn Williams. And I was just, I didn't know everything. I'm right in the middle of all the action. I thought.
Yeah, I think you ended up on Mark Kern's lap or something.
I ended up, that's exactly what happened. They kept coming towards me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I better, just slowly get out of the way. I kept walking back, and as Herb said, I ended up on Mike Kern's lap. I don't know who got the biggest shock.
Yeah. He
He
still
looked at me, I looked at him.
talks about that today.
I'm sorry. I
No,
didn't mean
don't
to.
be sorry.
Yeah, absolutely not. But Glenn, I had Glenn Williams on a podcast, I think last month, and he was saying that he can't wait to see you again. And when he wins it, he says when he wins it this year, he wonders how you're going to feel to look at his eyes and say congratulations.
Well, you have to do what you have to do, but you never know what might happen too.
There you go.
Yeah,
Because I don't know what Herb will have me do. So
right.
Scott, I know you know what the Ted DiBiase used to say. Everybody has a price, and he may have to pay the price.
That's right. Everybody has a price. That's all.
yeah,
And I don't know.
You have all these people in the ring. How many would you say there is at one time? Herb?
There was 32 last year. 32.
32.
It's not going to be that big this year. That was a logistical nightmare.
I was just going to say, I knew there was a lot of people. I was thinking 20. I didn't realize there was 32.
There was 32. Yeah, we had some come from Dory Funk and Marty Funk's school. And just like now, everybody's ringing my phone off wanting to be a part of it, coming from around the country, and it's a big thing. I mean, when all you do is mention Bruiser Brody Memorial, and everybody wants to throw their hat in the ring, and because they know Barbara's going to be there to award that big trophy to the winner.
Because I'm telling you, this is Herb. This is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I start seeing all the people that are coming, and this. I'll tell you what, folks out there, this is going to be incredible. This is going to be one of the most incredible fan fairs that anybody can come to.
Yeah, I think we're up to about 58 names right now.
Oh my gosh!
And we're still 4 months away. And like I said, there's not a day going by that I'm not getting a couple of calls, a couple of inquiries, and a late addition here just a couple of days ago. Missy Hyatt is signed on. She's going to be with us.
I saw that. I think she's on her way now to Jericho's cruise or something.
Yeah.
Quite a few of the people, Dugan and Missy Hyatt, and that they're all traveling. I think to Miami, or Miami. I think it is where they're getting on the cruise.
And of course, Sonny's bringing 3 or 4 of the Glow Girls with her. So it's getting big.
I just saw Sonny this weekend. We spent the weekend with Sonny up there.
Yeah, remember we talked on the phone that night. I called.
That's right. Can you believe it? We were just talking about that. Exactly what you called her about. We just finished a conversation, and then you call.
Yeah, that's what she said. So
Is that a small world?
A small world.
And I wanted to get up there. Herb sent me. He asked me if I wanted to come up there, and I wish I could. I only get 28 days off a year, so my schedule is already up till July. But my goal is to come out to Vegas this year to the CAC. So
Oh, you got to do that, right, Herb?
Oh, that's what I told him. If you want to network, if you want to meet the greatest
Oh.
people in the business and fans, Vegas is where it's at, or up to the Waterloo, Iowa, the Tragus Hall of Fame. Both of those two has got to be on your bucket list, because when you get the likes of Jerry Briscoe and Troy Peterson up at the Tragus Hall of Fame, but Vegas is just it's a nonstop. They have seminars, and everybody is just family. And you come out there and get introduced to a bunch of them. I guarantee you may not know anybody when you get there, but before you leave, you will have a list of names that you'll become automatic friends with.
Awesome.
Oh,
So that's my
yeah.
goal. That's my bucket list. I threw the little bait into my wife, because she likes to go to the slot machines, right? So I said, Vegas,
Vegas?
wrestling, let's go. So
Yeah.
yeah. So hello, Dad. My dad's on here watching. They're my biggest supporters of this whole thing.
Hi, Dad.
Hey.
My mom passed away in October, and last thing she told me was, you better not stop doing your podcast, because I really like watching it. So here we go.
Oh, there you go.
We appreciate Dad coming in and listening.
Absolutely.
And hopefully he watched a few wrestling matches over the years.
I think he did.
Good.
So
and Herb, I'm going to say something to you, Herb, right now. What are you doing at the Fan Fest? You've got Dr. D and Abdullah the Butcher.
Yeah, it's believe me, I've had to lay down some ground rules.
I was just going to say.
It's and that's what I said. It's a logistical nightmare with some of these guys. It's kind of like what Scott, you and I was talking before we went on the air. Some of the minor things that people can't get worked out, but I give respect. I want respect, and I won't take no BS. That's the thing, and they all know that.
That's Herb. Yes.
Herb the straight shooter for sure. So, did your husband ever discuss with you why he loved being what is considered as the first most popular independent wrestler?
I don't even think he just went out there and did his best. I don't think he really thought he was number one or anything. He used it as a business. He didn't use it as wrestling. He didn't use it as Bruiser Brody. It was Frank Goodish playing Bruiser Brody when he left the house. Bruiser Brody was the name of the business. Frank Goodish was the person he was. So I don't think he even really thought about that he was that good or what, because he would, especially in Japan, when he came back from Japan, he would actually, because remember, this is the days before the internet, and this is the days before this social media, he would bring back tapes from, Japan, and he would actually sit there, put the VHS tape into the tape recorder, what do you call them, and he would watch his matches, and he'd try to learn, because he'd say, well, I don't really like that, and I could have done better. So he critiqued himself, and I think it was always a learning process, like, when you work and you want to be better at what you are. I think that's how he more used it. What do you think, Herb?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, Scott, is that Frank worked for multiple territories. Paul Bosch and people like that, or you go up to the AWA and work for Vern Gagne. SICW was actually the first independent promotion that he worked for, other than the big territory days. And that was because of Larry Matasek and Sam Muchnick. You talk about a kid at a candy shop. The first time they pitched the idea to say, hey, how would you like to have Frank come up to Belleville, Illinois? And I remember we was at a show that night, and I looked at Larry and I said, Bruiser Brody's not going to come to Belleville, Illinois. Who are you kidding? He said, well, let me work on it. And that following week, we hooked up on the telephone, and it was a marriage from that point on. And all the years, anytime I ever called him, it was never a question. And I'd heard all the horror stories that you couldn't trust Frank. He'd hold you up. He wouldn't show. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'll argue with anybody. If he did that to anybody, they had it coming. If you treated him fair, if you lived up to your commitment with him, your agreement, I never had a problem with him. He scared the hell out of me the first time I beat him, because he was about 1 minute before the bell time, the show starting, that he hadn't showed up. And of course, I'm flashing through my mind, hey, everybody was right. He's going to stand me up, but it was kind of a rib that him and Larry Matisek played on me, and waited about a minute before the matches. The fans were rioting in the building basically, and my poor wife come outside and she said, "Do you hear what's going on in here? What are we going to do?" And I said, "What are we going to do? You got to go back in and tell him he ain't here." But they come pulling in there. In fact, it's ironic. That was at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds where we run our monthly shows at now. And that was back in the early 70s, late 70s. So, it's fun how things go around. But anytime I booked him anywhere, and then he introduced me to so many of the guys, Blackwell, Abdullah the Butcher, Dick Murdoch, Nard the Barbarian, people like that Ox Baker, that he would bring in, and we'd work him against one another. And I mean, as you can see right behind me, I miss him and Larry, and there's Sam right there. And I tell everybody, if it wasn't for those three gentlemen, there is no Herb Simmons, there is no SICW. I never would have got to meet the lovely Barbara Goodish and people like that. So I was a young man at the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
Because between Herb and Sam, they were the territories that he knew he didn't have any trouble, because all he wanted to do, he knew he could make money. He wanted to make the boys money. He wanted to make the promotion money, and he knew, but that sometimes didn't come across always the right way, because they wanted to kind of use him, I guess. You were honest with him. You couldn't meet a more honest person.
No,
and
well,
especially Sam, because when our son was born, Jeff, remember what happened? He went to go to the match that night. He was working St. Louis that night. Sam sent him home.
Said, "What are you
Right,
doing?"
Herb?
Yeah. Said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I got a match to do, and you booked me." And he said, "Yeah, but your son's being born at home. Get on the next flight and get home." And that's just how Sam was. And Frank was the same way with me. At that time, we were running shows at a place called South Broadway Athletic Club, and we were putting 500-600 people in there every month, packed. No, you couldn't put no more people in there. And my partner at that time, Tony Costa, Little Dynamite, he was my junior heavyweight champion. He said, "Man, we ought to get Frank to come over here. Man, he'd blow the roof off of this place." And I'd call Frank, and he'd say, "Herb, I hear you talk about that place all the time. And you're always telling me it's sold out. You don't want to spend the money on me to come in there. You want me to come in a place that you're trying to establish and use that." And so I always respected that. He could have took the money and been happy with it, but he was looking out. So I think that's why him and I had such a good business relationship. And I think Barbara will tell you that, our friendship was more than just business. I mean, we had talk about things going on in the future with Larry and I and him. And it's just an unfortunate, I miss him every day.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, sometimes life throws you a lot of curves that you don't expect.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm still looking at him behind you, Herb.
Oh, I look at him every day. I walk out of the bedroom, and sometimes it scares me when I walk out in the middle of the night and I see that figure there. But I know he's watching over us. And I don't know if I ever told you, Scott, but my one four-legged friend passed away. We called him Brody, and then I've got this. That was a Belgian Malinois, and his name is Bruiser. So I had Bruiser Brody that ran around the house all day long. And
Nice.
Yeah, in fact, remember Barbara, the one year I brought him down to the show.
I know. I got pictures.
They were the hit of the show.
Brody.
Yeah, I said Bruiser Brody's in the house.
They were hits.
Here come my Belgian Malinois and my big shepherd.
Nice. So, what were some of your favorite opponents of Bruiser Brody's, and what was some of his favorite opponents? Did you ever talk about that?
Well, Ric Flair. He always had good matches with Ric Flair. I think that's one of the few matches that I actually did get to see was the St. Louis. I think it was St. Louis, wasn't it? The St. Louis match.
Yes.
Where he went 1 hour with Ric Flair, because I don't think many people knew over here. They just thought of him as a brawler, that they didn't realize that he could go 1 hour with Ric Flair.
And what people don't realize is they had 3 of those type of matches in St. Louis. A lot of people aren't around to remember that. But you talk about a match that goes down in history as the greatest. And Barbara, you're right. I remember Frank kind of surprising himself, but that just goes to show how you work a match with a guy like Ric Flair. To keep up with Rick, Frank had the stamina, and the guy was in phenomenal shape. I mean, I tell the story all the time about when he got in the ring and rolled around with Lou Thez there in front of Larry and I at the Belclair Fairgrounds. Larry and I are the only two, other than the two Japanese photographers, and he kept up with Lou Thez, and so yeah, Frank was able to go. He just surprised himself.
Yeah, and I think part of that was why he made it in Japan too, because the Japanese is a whole different style of wrestling than what it is over in the States. I mean, it's wrestling over there. Here is a little bit more entertainment, like the old school. Not so much entertainment, but it was still for real. But then in Japan, it was totally it was wrestling more than anything. And I think that's what's helped him when he came back over here to do these matches that Herb has talking about. It gave him the stamina, because with him and Stan, you had to work. And another one I would say would be Jimmy Snooker, Superfly.
Okay.
He always,
He loved that.
yeah, he always enjoyed Superfly. Then he did a lot with Buck Robley, not so much wrestling. I'm just talking about the ones that we talk about. Gary Hart, who was a manager, he did a lot with Gary Hart. And I think you got to have probably, because it was Stan Hansen.
Yeah. And before we go any further, I talked to Stan yesterday, and I told him that we were going to be talking. He said to tell you he loved you and he can't wait till May to see you.
Oh, yeah, he's always kept in touch. Ever since, the very beginning, when everything happened, Stan has always been there.
Yeah.
In fact, he took Jeff over. Jeff would go up to his house. I think he was in Jackson, Mississippi back in those days. And Jeff would get on a plane. Of course, it was scary for Mom to put your son on the plane. And he'd go up to Stan and go on a road trip with Stan and his kids. And, which was really good because, he got a little bit of what his father was like, So I'm always grateful for Stan for doing it for Jeff when he was younger.
You get a kick out of this. I called him yesterday because I had a booking for him in Billings, Montana.
Oh.
And he's not wanting to do a lot of traveling anymore, but I called and said, this is a great promotion up there, and they really would like to have you to sign autographs. And so it was about a 30-minute twist his arm type thing. And finally, he said, now, ain't it coming to St. Louis too? I said, yeah, you're coming with us in May. And that's when he said, is Barbara going to be there? But so he's going to Billings, Montana for me later this year.
Wow. Yeah, I know he doesn't want to. He's get to that point now where he doesn't want to, travel too much away.
Yeah, that's what he said. Well, it's like everybody. We all hate these airports,
Yeah.
No.
I heard you wrote a book.
Oh, yeah. Right here. I actually got it.
That's awesome, man. Can you just tell us what prompted you to do that? I mean, what was like, oh my God, so.
No, in fact, it was Larry Matisak that talked me into it. What happened was there was another gentleman that wrote a book. I forget the name, but it's about Frank Bruiser. And I haven't read it, but I know his sister read it, and seemed there's quite a little bit of untruth in that book. So it was like, as you know, anybody can put anything out there. You have no say. They can say anything about anybody without any recourse. So then after that, Larry called me and asked me if I'd like to write a book. Well, knowing that this other book was out there and had a lot of untruth, and knowing Larry, I know that, Frank trusted Larry just like Herb. He trusted Larry, and I knew that Larry would do it right, and that this book would be truthful. It wouldn't be any fantasy. It wouldn't be anything. It would be hardcore truth. So I said, but I've never written a book before. How can I write a book? He said, well, just write down memories. That's all you have to do. And that's all I did. I just went through memories and write down. Well, as you know, when you tell the truth, it's so easy because you don't have to think about what you had said, how people will say all these things, but then the stories keep changing. When you tell the truth, it's the same story over and over again because it's the truth. You don't have to think about it. It's your life. So that was the reason that I wrote the book. Thank you, Larry. Rest in peace. We miss our Larry too.
Every day, every day.
I know.
Well,
Something you think about.
And I remember because when the other book was being written, the author of that book was trying to pick Larry's brain, and Larry started working.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
He contacted me as well. He wanted me to be part of it.
And that's when Larry, I was at Larry's house one day, and he was really upset about it. He said, I gave this gentleman the information that he's asked for, trying to help him, and I know Barbara has. But then when he would get proofreadings of it, it'd be totally mixed up. And I think that's when Larry and I sat there and I said, somebody just needs to tell the truth, and there's nobody better than Barbara. And, Barbara could tell the story of the wife, the Bruiser Brody at home, the Frank Goodish, and Larry could tell the story of their wrestling business. And that's what made it such a great book. So if you haven't got it yet, you're missing out on a great read.
Well, where do you get that? Where does a guy like me get that? Is it on Amazon?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you send me your name, send me your mailing address and that, I'll mail you one.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome.
That. Thank you so much. So let's talk about what Herb just said.
But I should really say something though. If anybody's watching this and they want a copy, message me. I'm in Facebook, just under my name, Barbara Goodish. Give me a message, and even if we're not friends or anything, make sure you tell me that you're interested in the book, because I sometimes get messages and they get lost in the But yeah, and I can forward one, send them a book and shipping, handling, and the cost of the book, and do it personally. I can put their name and everything on it. So if there's anyone interested out there, just message me, and I'd love to send you a book.
And you're going to have some at the Fan Fest also.
I'm sure I'm going to have some at the Fan Fest. I'll probably have some of the, the Power Town. I can't say dolls. I used to say the doll, action figures. My son went berserk. He said, "What are you doing? You're saying dolls. It is not a doll. It is an action figure."
Now it's Barbara Goodish. It's Barbara Goodish on Facebook.
I'm Barbara Goodish is on Facebook.
Okay. So we talked. Herb mentioned it, but so we got Frank and Bruiser Brody. Frank, the husband, the father. Bruiser Brody, the business, and so how did you and Frank meet?
Well, I was working in Australia at the time, and Frank, I think Fritz, sent him over. He, sent him over from America over to Australia. They had a wrestling promotion in Australia, and it just so happened that all the guys were staying at the hotel that I was working at. So I met Frank the first time he came in. I mean, this was hard on these guys because of the fact that you're away from home. As you know, you're away from home. You didn't make phone calls back in these days because this was the late 70s. To make a phone call to America was a little bit expensive. So they'd write letters. So they'd show me photographs of their children when they got a letter from their wife and everything. Well, this one night, I just happened to be talked into working the night shift, which was what I'd already worked one from 3 to 11. So at 11, he'd been in the hotel probably about 3 months. And I had a good friend, Killer Carl Krupp, who's also passed right now. And I was just getting ready to leave, and all the boys were coming back from their wrestling. And I'm talking about some of the people that I met was Andre the Giant, Rick Martel, Don Morocco, J.J. Dillon. I could go on, but that's enough to start off with. And Carl said, well, my boss was an American gentleman, and he had a place, the Texas Tavern, hotel motel. Then he had a bourbon and beef piano bar up the street. So they said, well, look, you've just finished work. Why don't you just come up and have a drink with us? I figured out, well, there's no harm. I know them. And we had a table that probably was about, there was 10, 12 of us sitting there. Well, it just so happened that one by one they started leaving. They'd excuse themselves, not come back. And then all of a sudden, there was me, Carl, and Frank. Didn't think. And then Carl gets up and left. Well, I found out later I got worked. He worked. This is how good a worker he was. He didn't know how to get me by myself. She says, she'd never come out with me if I ask her out. So why don't you ask her out? We'll all go and then just disappear and leave me with her. So that's what happened. So he was a good worker. So he worked me from the very beginning.
Here's that, Barb.
There you go. Yeah, there's the action figure. Great action figure. It's one of the best I've ever seen.
It's the best I've seen. I'll tell you, it's a lot of work into that.
Mm-hmm.
That is sick. That's pretty cool.
I mean, look at it down to you can see on the forehead. I mean, all the detail that they had to put into that is just
it's so real.
Amazing. Yeah, when you
open it up, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, when you put it right there by him like that, man. So my good friend sent that to me.
Pretty cool.
Thanks, Barbara.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, he was in Australia for about, he went home for Christmas, then he came back again. So it was probably 9 months or something the whole time that, he was working Australia. So then when he got ready to go back home, which was an unexpected, sometimes if it wasn't done right, he would kind of, right, Herb?
Yeah.
He stood up. So he came in one night, and it was like he put this load of money on the table, and all he said was, I'd like you to come home. He knew it wouldn't be right then. I mean, I'd been working for, a long time, though I had a lot of stuff to take. And it was like, well, there was no promises. There was nothing. There was absolutely no, it's just, I'd like you to come. Oh, and then I thought, he trusts me because I could have just kept the money. It was a lot of money in those days. I could have kept the monies, but I knew that he trusted me enough to put that, because if you didn't know this, Herb knows, he was very, very frugal. He was, green beans. I used to have to pack him green beans and tuna every time when he went on the road. That's what he'd eat in the hotel room. So, so for him to show that for me, to put that, and I tell people this today. I say, if you get an opportunity, it was like, I've got an opportunity. I always wanted to visit London. So I said, well, I can get a ticket to America, then I'll have a ticket out of America, because you had to be, what I mean? You couldn't just stay in America. You had to be going in and go out of America. So I thought, well, if the worst comes to the worst, I'll end up in London. But as you can see, I'm still here. So I guess it all worked out.
Yeah. So you have a son. Did
Yes.
he ever want to go into wrestling?
No. Herb, I'm trying. I wanted to make an announcement. I actually asked him, but I didn't want to put it out too far ahead of time, just in case.
Yeah.
I wanted to make that announcement tonight, but he didn't call me back. I told him to call me that I was doing your podcast, and I wanted to announce something. But
yeah, patience of virtue.
Oh yeah, and where was I? Now I've lost.
About Jeffrey. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because you know what I think it is? I'm sure he kind of blames wrestling for what happened to his dad. He's just starting. I mean, he's 40. Yeah, he's 40. He was only 7 years old. He lost his dad, and he was with me the whole time. I don't know what he remembers, because when we went over there, he was with me. So he shared the whole horror story, with everything that happened. And but now he's more, he does open up a little more, and he's kind of realizing that his dad kind of left a legacy. That's one thing that he is finally. And with the Dark Side of the Ring, you know, the Vice and network that put the pilot episode was Frank's episode. So they still contact me because after doing Frank's pilot episode, they're now on to the 5th season. And that
Yeah.
was all, as I said, that's all because of that first episode we did. Well, Jason and Evan were kind of more like Jeff's age. So I was blown away when I was doing the interview. And then they asked Jeff if he'd like to, speak. Remember, he actually, that's the first time he's ever, I think that was the breakthrough too. That was the first time he actually ever, you know what I mean, got up and the TV show and everything and actually said something. And I think the worst part was when they, this is not the exact way it went, but they asked him what he remembers about his dad. Well, his answer was to the effect of, everybody has stories except me. And I just went, oh. And that's true. Everybody tells stories about his dad, and he doesn't really remember much about his dad. And I think that's the sad part right there.
Well, and I think we saw that a little bit with Gail, but now she's such a sweetheart, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to get her one day to sit down and do a little talk like this because that's Frank's sister, and
Right.
I think when I first met her, if you remember correctly, it was kind of like taboo, and I understood it wholeheartedly because Scott, there are people out there who take advantage of bad situations, and Barbara can tell you there's people out there that's printing shirts, and they were printing pictures and making off of it, and so his sister basically thought people were benefiting from a terrible situation, and but now, I mean, with the help of Barbara, Gail is one of our dearest friends, and I think she realizes all we're doing at SICW is what I pledged to do, and that was to keep his memories alive, because that's how much I think the fans loved him. I know how much I loved him. He done so much for the business in his own way, and that's kind of why I always looked up to him. Hey, if you want me, this is what it takes, and if you treat me right, you're going to get money out of me. And any promoter that worked him, that treated him right, made money with him.
Yeah, exactly. And Gail is going to be there in May too.
Yeah,
she's coming.
I'm looking forward to seeing her. Yeah, it's going to be a night.
Yeah, and she's so looking forward to seeing you and Mickey. And Mickey, she's really looking forward to seeing you.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you. Jessica and Darla's going to be there, and Pamela's coming in, and Sonny's going to be an all-star card.
Oh my gosh. And then when you think of some of the people, like you said, that are going to be there, I mean, Haku, Sergeant Slaughter, I mean, you that's just naming a few. I can't believe Greg Gagne is going to be there.
Jumping Jim Brunzell.
Now I'm getting jealous, guys.
Yeah.
Well, we're just rubbing it in, but your listeners out there, hopefully they'll come in and partake on it. And there's somebody with that show should come up to that. Okay, yeah, there you go.
And then James Beard, who who played himself on the Iron Claw, the movie, the Von Erich movie.
Great guy, great. I love James, and it's going to be great. But and again, out of everything that we're doing, the Bill Apter show the night before, that Friday night, the one-man show, Bill Apter.
How do I get a ticket?
I think that's already taken care of. Now Darla's got to buy because she'll want him to sing karaoke and.
I know. She told me she's already got her ticket.
Yeah, you girls are already taken care of, but then the whole weekend is great, but the Bruiser Body Battle Royal is what it's all tied in for, and the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame induction. We're putting Leilani Kai in, Judy Martin, Wendy Richter, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. So I mean, it's a great weekend, And if you haven't got tickets yet, I wish you would.
Oh,
Uh,
you gotta get tickets, guys.
was doing
Anyone watching?
I was doing a podcast earlier, and like I said, everybody says I was nuts for the first one I did. Now they're saying I'm double nuts. And I said, well, yeah, but you look at it this way. If this thing bombs, it's bombs on me. If it goes over great, it was great for everybody. So.
And it's going to be great for everybody. I have no doubt.
I have no doubt either. I've seen pictures and videos of the past couple ones, so I'm sure it's going to be good. So, Miss Goodish, so Frank's at home and it's time for him to fly out to an event or whatever. How soon after you drop him off at the airport does he turn into Bruiser Brody? Where does he leave it at the car door?
Well, as you know, these were the times where you could pull right up to the door of the airport, and there was no insecurity. Well, security, but you could keep the car there, pull up to the door. When you picked them up, you could stay right there at the door. You didn't get told to move or anything. So he would be Frank. He'd get in the car, drive the car. He'd drive the car, and me and Jeff are in the car. He'd get out of the car. I'd get out to go up, around to drive back home again. Give us both a kiss. He was Frank. He was Frank Goodish. As soon as he went through the door of the airport, you could see the whole thing. You could see his whole body language changed. He became Bruiser Brody. Same thing when he came home. You could see Bruiser Brody was coming to the door. The door opened. We're out there. He became Frank Goodish. That was the transformation was between like your question. That was the two. That was when he was home. He was Frank Goodish. He was a father. He was a husband, working around the house, going to the gym. We had a gym in the house too, so he didn't really have to go out much. We were out in the country, so we were pretty, we had 5 acres out in the country, fenced lot. So, he had his privacy. And this was before cell phones. So we didn't even have an answering, because he said, when I'm home, I'm home. I don't want to be bothered. I just imagine what it would be like today where you're 24/7. People can contact you. So he wouldn't answer the phone. The phone would ring. Like he never knew who it was because we didn't have a answering machine. When he wanted to get back, he'd put the phone on, or he would call people. He said, I know who I want to call. I will call people. I don't need to be. And that's why he used to tell me, don't, be careful who you answer the phone, because there's a lot of stuff goes with people in the entertainment business, as we all know. There's a lot of unwelcomed phone
That's
calls.
awesome that he could separate real life from the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's super cool to hear of a man that can do that, because I live my business. I live it all the time, but you see a lot of people that can't leave work at work, and so
they become who they create. That
absolutely.
is their whole. They lose sight of who they really are.
So was he gone a lot, and how did you handle him being gone?
Gone a lot. I would say if you added it all up, it would be lucky to be 3 months that he would be home a year.
Wow.
A couple of days here, a couple of days there. Probably I'm over exaggerating when I say 3 months. No, he was gone like in Japan, 6 weeks at a time, and he did several trips at the end to Japan, and then he was all over the country traveling. So no, I just had. In fact, he once said to me, he said, I had to come to the end of the world to find someone that's going to put up with my lifestyle. Because he said, I knew that you can handle it, because I'm not. He said that even before everything. He said, it's not going to be easy because I'm going to be gone. So you're going to spend a lot of time by yourself. So, and that's exactly, as I said, he was honest. He didn't sugarcoat anything. It was like, this is the way it's going to be. And, I hope you can take it. I did,
So did he ever share any road trip stories, funny road trip stories or anything like that?
Well, I'm just trying to think funny road trip stories. It's such a long time ago now that how your memory gets a little bit.
That's okay. Yeah.
I think just a few, not funny stories. Like sometimes he'd work Paul Bosch in Houston. That was another one he didn't mind working Houston. And he would, he'd call me up and say, hey, this is midnight, because it was a midnight flight coming back from Houston into San Antonio. And a couple of times he'd call and say, hey, I'm coming home tonight, but I've got a friend with me. So just make sure there's some food ready. Go to the airport. By the time you get back to the house, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of times it was Stan. He'd bring Stan home, and they'd be off and the next morning, they were gone somewhere else. Not a funny story, but it's kind of, one of those,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
never knew. It was one of those lifestyles that you never knew from day to day.
Absolutely.
And then I went to Puerto Rico with him a couple of times too, me and Jeff, which is a whole different, this was when he was just working there. And we would have a little vacation.
Nice.
So not really work stories, but it was,
Yeah, absolutely.
it was learning. I think one of the things that Jeff, I don't know whether he remembers, but because he's heard the story several times, we went the last summer. Before everything happened, he'd taken a little bit of time off. So we went as a family to Six Flags Over Texas. And him and Jeff went on this ride called, what was it? Thunder, what was it? I forget. But it was one of these rides that you get in and you go up. It's like a little, those little, ride things that they have, like there's 4 different things, 3 in each row or something. And Thunder Mountain or something like that. And what it is, you went way, way up, really high. And then once you got up high, tidal wave, that's what it was called. Then it would come down into the water. And the second part was after you left, you got wet on the bridge because it was like a tidal wave. Well, I didn't go. This is like a father's son. I said, yes, father's son, you can, do it all the way down below. Well, all of a sudden, I see them go way, way, way up. You see, one thing that a lot of people didn't know, Frank was afraid of heights. He didn't like heights. So this thing, I thought, he's very brave, and he's got all these people that know him, because this is Texas, and he was very well known in Texas. This thing keeps going up, 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 right up to the top. Then nothing happens. I said, oh, what the blazes is going on? Next second, I see these people climbing. They always have the ladders next to these big rides. I see these people climbing up. The thing had stuck at the top.
Oh no.
Of the thing. And I knew here's Frank with his son. Probably everybody in the ride probably knew who he was. And here he is stuck up there. I know he must have been white, because here you are real high up, not knowing what's going on. It's broken down. And it was like about 10, 15 minutes they were stuck up there. And finally, boom, it comes down. And I think, as I said, I think that was one of the things I think he'll always remember. This was just before. And I think Jeff, maybe just we remember things sometimes from people telling us stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm standing there thinking, OMG, this is.
We used to kid him when he'd get up, go up on the top rope to come off with that big knee. We used to tell him, don't get a nosebleed, because he was scared of height. If you get him much higher than that, because he was so big anyway, and he'd get up on that top rope, and you could see he'd get up there and he'd come down, and we'd kid him about it. Was you scared up there, Frank? And no, I wasn't scared. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because not many people knew about that. Yeah, he didn't like heights.
Wow. My kids, of course, they have some questions. I call it Kids Corner. So they just shoot questions, quick ones. So I'll just read them off to you. What's your favorite food?
Ooh, I love pizza.
Okay, well that goes with the second question. Does pineapple belong in your pizza?
I have Hawaiian pizzas with pineapple and ham. Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Favorite color is teal.
Who's your best friend overall?
Oh, I'd have to pretty much say Darla Staggs, who Herb knows very well. And secondly would be Pamela Morrison.
Okay.
I got two.
We call them the three queens of wrestling.
Three queens of wrestling. Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Ooh, that is quite a question. I haven't been to the movies for a while. I'm trying to think when I was young, what would be my favorite movie? Oh, Psycho.
Psycho.
I know. And you know it, not so much my favorite movie. I won't say it was my favorite movie. It's the only movie that affected me all my life. I still will take a shower and lock the door.
Well, I tell you what, I can't remember the movie. What the movie was called? My wife will probably chime in, but I hate scary movies. I just
Yeah,
don't
I
like
did.
them.
Yeah, that was the one. I never watched them after that. That
What was it?
affected.
Yeah. Okay, so my wife and I lived up at this time up in this little town up on the lake in the middle of the woods with nobody, and she puts on this movie called Jeepers Creepers. And I all of a sudden got really tired. I was like, oh, it's time for me to go to bed. All in actuality, I didn't want to watch the movie because I would have been.
Oh,
You wouldn't have slept at night.
Right. Yes.
No.
That's right.
Ever since I saw that movie, I think that was the real only horror movie that I saw. And it's like I said, today, what is it, 50, 60 years later, I still lock the door in the bathroom because it scared me so bad.
Absolutely.
So not my favorite movie, but the one that affected me the most.
Other than your husband, your favorite wrestler?
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite a question. I'd have to, favorite wrestler. I like Jim Dugan, Hacksaw,
Okay.
because he told me a story about how Frank was the one that got him with the 2x4. And when I saw him, he had to tell me the story and said, you know how Frank, when he went to the ring, he would pick up anything. You never know what he was going to do in the days. So Hacksaw was asking them, I think I've got the story right, Herb, was asking him, and he said, hey, when you're going into the ring, find something to pick up. Well, that day, Hacksaw was going into the ring. He saw a 2x4. He still has the 2x4 today. And he said, Frank was the one that got me the 2x4, and I'll always remember him for that.
Well, Jim Hoffman says Big Texan should be your favorite wrestler.
Well, I wanted to say that, but I didn't want to show favoritism.
There you go. The next two, I don't know what they're. I mean, I just write it down. What's your favorite type of potato chip?
Ooh, potato chip. All of them.
All of them. Right. Then this last one, I got to read it. How she said it. What do you do? This one comes from a 7-year-old. Okay.
Okay.
What do you do when you first wake up?
When I first wake up, I stretch.
I mean,
I go, oh, I stretch, and I open. No, you open your eyes when you first wake up. You open your eyes.
Say thank God for another day.
I woke up.
And they will ask me this. They asked me like this morning what the answers were last night. Do you have a pet? If you do, what's your pet?
What's my pet?
Yeah, do you have a pet?
I got 2 pets. I have one asleep next to me right now. I got a little Chihuahua and I've got a little Sheltie, a puppy Sheltie. Love both of them.
Awesome.
Yeah, as I said, he's sleeping next to me on this couch right now. He's fast asleep.
So, so when you got the news of your husband passing and all that stuff, you took a trip over to overseas. How was that interaction? I don't like to.
No,
I don't know
yeah. Well, first of all, I had just talked to Frank that afternoon, and we'd set up to talk on Monday. This was Saturday now. And then I started, and we always had a thing: do not answer the phone when I'm not home. If it comes after a certain time, do not answer the phone, because I had a lot of women call me and try to cause trouble, and part of that whole thing. And about midnight, my phone started ringing. I knew we'd just talked, so I knew it wasn't him, because we'd set up another phone call. Ring. Finally, about 1 o'clock in the morning, I answered the phone, and it was a woman. And she said, this is Nancy Cologne. There's been an accident. You need to come to Puerto Rico. And I went, oh boy, this is really a good one. Yeah, I get on a plane, I go to Puerto Rico. Oh, I'd really be in trouble. I listened to somebody trying to cause trouble. But I thought, well, maybe I just better check it out. Has something, a little birdie on your shoulder says, well, maybe you should just check it out. So I called the hotel. I knew where he was staying, so I called the hotel, and the receptionist put me through to Dutch Mantel's room. And Dutch Mantel informed me that he didn't know exactly. He just said there was an accident. And I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, maybe you better come. And I know Frank did not like hospitals. That was one thing. I thought, well, if he has to be in the hospital, perhaps I better go and, take care of things and make sure this is Puerto Rican, make sure that I can, take care. And me and Jeff we were always together. I mean, we were buddies. And if I went somewhere, Jeff came with me. So, I mean, by now this is like 1:30 in the morning. I didn't have any money. I knew Frank had a credit card somewhere. He never used credit, but I knew he got one, and it was hidden. I was lucky enough. I found the credit card and grabbed Jeff, my neighbor. I said, I don't even know how I'm going to get. There was a flight leaving, I think at 6:30 in the morning or something. And so I called my neighbor. I had very close neighbors. I mean, they weren't close, but just up the road. But we were really close as friendships. So I called my neighbor, and they said, well, we'll take you to the airport. Why don't you leave Jeff here? You go find out what's going on. I said, no, if I'm there, he's going to want his, he's going to want to see his son. That'll be the best thing possible, depending on what happened. I lucked out, got to the airport, and this was when Braniff, there was an airline called Braniff. They were still in business in those days. And because Frank traveled so much, he knew the guy that was on Braniff. You know what I mean? He was taking the reservations at the airport. And when I explained, he took the credit card. I mean, I'd never used a credit card, had never been used. He actually gave me a good price ticket, and he took the credit card. So that was one of the reasons that I could, get out. I didn't know what I was going to do. Just threw a few things in a bag. Jeff was still in his jammies, so changing him at the airport to put some clothes on, got on the plane. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. And Nancy said that she would meet me at the airport. I mean, I didn't know who she was or anything, but I think you go into shock. I think you somehow just, you do what has to be done. I guess that's who I was. Something had to be done. I just went and did it. I sometimes think now, how did I do all this? Get to the airport, and as Herb knows what happened at the airport. Here's Abdullah running out of the airport, and he was the one that told that Frank had passed. And I'm standing there, couldn't find Jeff. Jeff's playing around the airport. I mean, it was like, that's how I was told. And then, of course, the rest is kind of blur. It was, I asked myself now, Nancy finally found me. She took me and Jeff to their place. They were staying in a condo type thing because their house was getting renovated. Her son, Khalito, who's now wrestling.
Uh-huh.
He was just a little bit older than Jeff. He's out there playing basketball with a bunch of boys. My son loves sports. He loves basketball. Jeff gets out. He goes right out to the basketball court and starts playing basketball. And I left him there. It was like, what the blazes? I don't know these people. I leave my son and with, these strangers, but they were laughing and playing basketball and having a great time. And then Nancy took me straight to the morgue, and then the rest, is just, I sometimes think when I tell the story that I don't think I'm talking about myself. I think I'm talking about somebody else, because I sometimes realize, how did I do all this? I don't even know. And then I think I talked a couple of the friends, and then I had to call the parents, his parents, and they asked me, oh, we should send somebody down with you. I said, no, this is dangerous. No, I can handle it, because I didn't have anybody there, because everybody had left. All the Americans had left after that, after what happened. But I managed to get it done and took him home with me on the plane, and we had a little celebration of life back in San Antonio.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing that. I wasn't sure how to ask that question, and
No,
so
that's okay.
but I can tell you the guy above you is one supporter of you and your husband, and I know that you are loved as a family at SICW. So what does it mean that SICW has the Bruiser Brody Memorial each year, and the love that they show you and your son and your family is, in my unexplainable. I don't. So
I know. I can't even put it into words what Herb and his organization means to me. And as we talked before, just remembering that Bruiser Brody Memorial Show, keeping his memory alive. I mean, I love Herb, I love Mickey, I love his whole family. It feels like family to me, that I don't really have any family over here. And, very Frank's sister, a couple of Frank's sisters, and that's about everybody else is gone. And I can't even explain what it means to me. It's right here in the heart. And it makes me speechless, the love that I have for this organization and for the family.
And then we mentioned the CAC, and that's where he got inducted into the Texas Southern Hall of Fame. So you have a lot of people surrounding you with love and just keeping that memory alive, and that's just, to me, that's awesome. So, man, I thank you for keeping his memory alive, as long with all these other legends that you bring to us fans. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, and Barbara and I have talked about it for years now, and I've talked to other people that, we are just fortunate to be continuing to build on the foundation that people like Frank built. They are the ones that laid the foundation. And so promoters like myself and even the new guys that are out there trying to do it, and ladies, don't kid yourself. You're building on that foundation that was solid. It crumbled every now and then. Sam Muchnick used to say it was like a roller coaster ride. Wrestling right now is at another peak. It's at the top, but I'm going to tell you, Sam, everything that Sam ever told me during my times of sitting with him and Larry is all come true. So just because wrestling, everybody's feeling this high, we've got this going on and that going on, that roller coaster will reach the top and it will take another plunge. But again, we'll ride the tide while we can. But there's one thing I can assure you, the legacy of Frank, Bruiser Brody, King Kong Brody, wherever you called him, and I tell this all the time, some parts of the country called him Bruiser Brody, some called him King Kong Brody. I called him both, but I also called him a friend. And I owe so much to what he did for us here. My wife, my boys were the ring boys back in the day and would take his gear back to the dressing room. So my children, my daughter, and all grew up with it, and they all talk about, when they come over to the house, they see the picture of Frank and Larry and Sam, and they know what it all meant. And they sometimes say, Dad, why do you keep doing this? How long are you going to keep doing this? And I'm to the point now where I'm almost concerned about, if I don't keep doing it, who is going to do it? I know someday I won't be here to do it, But I hope there's people out there like Big Jim or Gary Jackson who got the nickname Night Train from Bruiser
That's
Brody.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there. I mean, there are so many of the legends out. The story that Barbara just told about Hacksaw Jim Duggan in the 2x4. I know that's exactly how that happened. Frank told him, don't get no boas and don't get nothing wild like that. You get something you can protect yourself with, because when you're out there, he said, why do you think I carry a chain when I go over to Japan and I'm swinging it around? You know, some of these fans will really maybe try to do harm to you. And that's where Jim came up with and Frank's the one that told him, said, grab a 2x4.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's people like that will tell. Mick Foley will tell you the impact that Bruiser Brody had on his life growing up. He influenced not only its fans, but other wrestlers. That's why I think that as long as there's such a thing as professional wrestling, Bruiser Brody's name will live on forever.
I've heard that story about the multiple times. I love the story, Night Train story.
Yeah,
How he got a phone call from Bruiser Brody. Hey, this is da da da.
I was
Night
there.
Train.
I was
Yeah.
I was at Larry's house. We were sitting at Larry's house when he made the call.
Yeah, so
You know?
I mean that's just a so cool story, and so yeah, and I mean we talked about all over the country, and he's even today celebrated over in Japan, according to the articles I read, and I'm like, that is just what a legacy that you, and I'm sure you and your son have to be proud of what your husband and dad, best friend, did and left on this world of
Barbara,
crazy.
tell them about the episode that's being done, the radio episode that you're working on.
Oh yeah, the BBC. They're doing a thing on the BBC.
Okay.
Kind of like a radio episode. You did it, didn't you, Herbert? Gail did it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They said, "Oh, we're only going to do an hour," and I think I'm going to 3 hours. Bless you.
Yeah, bless you, honey. Herb says.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says,
and
"Thank you."
I said, so there's several different things that people now are doing. It's, as I said, it's amazing, and still doing merchandise. I still get like Japan is still putting merchandise out on him, especially because I guess in Japan that the dominant tag team was, of course, Frank and Stan. So it's still remembered today, the two of them, even though Stan, I know, still goes over occasionally, but they're still putting merchandise out on two of them. Unbelievable.
So, Barbara, why don't you tell him about the plan that Frank had with the youth, and we got to see that firsthand when we produced there's a called the Fox Theater in St. Louis, Missouri. The only show that was ever produced there, we did. Sam Muchnick, Larry, and I, and Frank was a major part of that. We had Kamala, the Ugandan Giant, Gentleman Chris Adams, the Fantastics, the Midgets were on that card, Crusher Blackwell. But prior to that show, we had a Boy Scout organization brought their Boy Scouts in and set them in right down in the first several rows. And Frank was up on stage at first and doing a talk to them. And, and how young men are, even in the Boy Scouts, but when he jumped down off the stage and got right down face to face with them, it was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. And so go ahead, Barbara, and tell him about kind of what the idea was.
Yeah, see, we had started because he was knowing that he's a big guy, that there had to be something after wrestling, that he knew that I don't know how much longer I can be doing what I do in the ring and getting hurt. As I said, that's why a lot of them now are really hurt. So he started a LLC, BAM, Brody Athletic Management. His idea was we had like a 40-acre out in the country, in the hill country in San Antonio, with a little stream running through it. His idea was, the one idea, there was a couple of ideas he had. This idea had an old mobile home, and he thought about what he would do would be take disadvantaged youth, boys, out and show them what it was like, out there in the country, maybe fishing and hiking and doing things. Because you realize that sometimes all it takes for these children to be changed is for somebody to pay attention to them.
Exactly.
to show them that they care. And that was one of the ideas. The other idea, he was working with a gentleman from the Texas University in San Antonio. And what it was, we had bought a wrestling ring from Joe Blanchard, I think was by
Joe.
my, yeah, mine gets a little foggy at this. And what he was going to do, he had it with this professor at the university. They were going to do a skit. What they were getting was permission to go around schools, to get permission, go around the schools, put up a wrestling ring at the school, and do a skit about the DARE program, the dangers of drugs.
Yeah. Mhm.
You know, because you think they wouldn't listen to Frank. You know, you have people go into the schools with an authority figure. Well, we know how kids can be. We were there ourselves. We don't listen to something. But you put somebody like Frank in the ring doing this skit with with the permission from the school district, because it had to go through the school district to do something like that. And to get up there and talk to these kids about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, and like you said, what he did with the Boy Scouts. You think they wouldn't have listened?
Um,
They would have listened. So he had all these ideas just ready to go. Plus Herb, as you know too, doing the shows, doing the independent shows with you, because this was just at the very beginning time of the independent people starting to be out there. But has a different, but he didn't. But he had some great ideas, didn't he, Herb?
oh yeah, he the LLC that he had farmed, and like I said many times when he was in town, I had a bar and grill at that time in Cahokia, Illinois, and I had turned the upstairs into the Brody Lounge, and it was a place that when he was in town, we could take him there. He could be comfortable. We could bring VIPs in that really enjoyed getting to talk with him, and he could unwind basically. And so we had a lot of conversations, him and Larry and I, on different business ventures that we knew was going to work. And one of the other ones was he was going to be an agent for some of the athletes out there, because he had a lot of baseball followers and football guys that could you imagine Frank Goodish coming in and sitting down and negotiating your contract for you?
Yeah.
There was nobody better at negotiating than him.
Yeah.
And nobody was going to argue with him. So there was all kinds of things that we had talked about, like Barbara said, and he was narrowing it down. Back in 1988, he was with Larry and I at that place in Cahokia Heights the weekend before the terrible, terrible thing happened. And I'll never forget that day. And I'll never forget 7 days later when Larry called me and told me about what had happened. And I'm thinking it's a plane crash or something like that. And, it's a terrible, terrible thing. But when you look at that lovely lady there that has went through what her and Jeffrey and her sister-in-laws have had to go through, but there's a silver lining there that, his memory is, what happened didn't happen in vain. I told this story a million times. He was probably one of the toughest individuals that you ever wanted to meet. But when circumstances are against you, I don't care how tough you are. What happened, happened. But karma is the B word, as they say. And sooner or later, things will be justified. But we're going to continue to keep his memory. And what you're doing tonight, Scott, is helping do that. So I want to thank you for allowing us the platform to come on and tell those stories, because there's probably some followers out there that hasn't heard about them. And for Barbara to come on out there late at night, I know she's tired. And but I really appreciate it. Once again, I call and she comes running.
I appreciate you calling me that night, Herb. I know you watch most of my podcasts, and when I got a text message, this is how it went, Mr. Goodish. He texted me, he goes, "Call me, please." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll call him." And he's like, "Hey, here's the opportunity." And I'm like, "Man, I could not pass it down." And I was like, he goes, "So I was like, holy cow. I actually got off the phone, and my wife goes, what's going on? I go, you have no idea. Of course, she's not a wrestling fan. She doesn't know whoever is. And I am going to interview the wife of one of the greatest legends, if not the greatest legend around.
Oh.
And she goes, what? And I'm like, so, I appreciate you, Herb. I appreciate you, Miss Goodish, for taking the time out of your schedule. And I know it's getting late. It's 9:00 here, so it's got to be 10:00 over where you're at.
Well, I'll tell you what, tell the kids they were great questions.
I will tell them that. And I appreciate you guys.
That's really the reason why I watch your show, because I want to hear what the kids are asking.
They were great.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. That's the best part of the show.
There you go. You ought to get a group picture of them. That way there you can kind of have it on a screenshot.
Oh, yeah, love to see
that.
I mean, they're asking the questions. They ought to be a part of the show,
Yeah, come on and ask a question.
I'd have to figure that out because I have to wear like a mask.
Yeah.
Because we can't,
right.
Unfortunately, we can't show pictures of our babies up here. So
I understand that, yeah.
But no, we love them so much. I love hearing your story of your husband's reasoning behind behind those all that acreage and stuff to give the kids the love that they have never. Because we took our kids to the zoo a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and to see the look on these faces of never seen a giraffe, and this girl's heart just melted and the tears were falling on her face, and you're like, this is why we do what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
To create those memories, to create those moments in life that they'll never forget, and
I know, because that's our future. The children today are our future.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's it. I tell you.
So I hope to get that CAC. I don't know if you'll make it up there, Miss Goodish, but
I'm there.
She's already got her tickets. Her and Darla and Pam.
All right, that is I'm the only one
that's not going to go this year.
What?
You're not going to go, Herb?
Yeah.
I hope you're joking.
Yeah, because I got to meet the man behind this thing, man. And but again, thank you, Herb, for allowing me to cover SICW. I appreciate that. Thank you, Barbara Goodish, for being on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. I'm really gonna thank the fans that watched. I want you to know if there's something you want to say to people before we leave, and then I'm going to play a song and showing the people that support us. But please stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. Don't click off here because I want to talk to you guys in private. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I am so grateful for everybody that remembers Frank, for Herb, the show, everything. It's just incredible for the family. And yeah, I quite like the Big Texan too.
Yeah, and don't forget the Fan Fest coming up.
And the Aviator Hotel and Ballroom, 17th, 18th of May in St. Louis. You have to be there and come up and see me. I'd love to see everybody there, and it is going to be quite some weekend.
Right. And then stay tuned. Follow me because I've already started announcing some of the entrances into the Bruiser Body Battle Royal. Like I said, I've got people coming from Iowa already, from Arkansas that's entering into it, from Jason Jones, the Space Cowboy, showed his hat. So,
and I give the cup, whoever the winner is, and hopefully there's no controversy this year.
Right.
Yeah. Chaos creates controversy, right?
I can guarantee you that if Barbara Goodish, and I know she's going to be there will be controversy.
There will be. And I will say this because I won't be able to be there, unfortunately, but somebody needs to put Glenn Williams in his place, and I think you can do it.
Believe me, I think that he'll meet his
match.
Yeah, he'll meet him and Sean Benson. Sean Benson's one of your favorites, isn't he, Scott?
Oh, yeah, I love the man. I love that Canadian hero. He's my Canadian hero.
Yeah.
But hey, everybody, Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Her Simmons, thank you. Barbara Goodish, thank you. Remember, Fan Fest on May 17th and 18th. Keep on watching the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the follow button. If you're watching on Facebook, hit the follow button. Let's build this community. We're going to get amazing interviews the rest of the 2024. hopefully, and I'm going to bring my equipment. So I'm at CAC. I can sit down with Barbara Goodish and Herb and have a live face to face. Look out. And it's Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. I thank everybody for watching. We love you guys, and thanks again.
All my dogs, make some noise up in this house.
Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the grind. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your head is knocked out. Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the grind. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your head is knocked out. Fight with Adrian Whisper is like a fight with the devil, because when he's dealing with you, you cannot get on this level. Fight with Adrian Whisper is like a fight with a king. It's like a fight with an army. They got the tanks and everything. He's leaving bruises and stitches, possibly leaving you crippled. Cause when he sets up the table and sends you straight through the middle. 6 sadistic free, beat that ass with a light bulb. Leave a piece of glass embedded in the back of your skull. Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the ground. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your ass is knocked out. Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the ground. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your ass is knocked out.